Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Crowdlinker Fireside Chat. I'm Aram Melkoumov, the host. Thanks for tuning in. On the show, I'm interviewing product innovation leaders who are working on big industry disruptive problems from within the large organizations. My guests on the show have been in the trenches and have lots of practical advice to share about building quality digital products, staying agile, and fostering an innovation culture within their organization. This is season 2, episode number 4, and I'm here today with Pansy Lee to chat about adapting to COVID, running experiments, and becoming a product leader without a traditional background. Pansy is currently a product leader at ClearCo, formerly named Clearbanc, where she's responsible for building new products and services to help founders succeed. Before ClearCo, Pansy was the director of product and design at MLSE, as well as holding product leadership roles at companies like Intuit and RL Solutions. Pansy has also been a mentor for Side by Side, and has been a judge, speaker, and panelist at multiple tech events. So I'm super excited to have you on our show today, Pansy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So first question I have is, maybe you could tell some of the audience members who are going to be listening about a little bit about your role that you're currently doing at ClearCo and what you're working on and where you're based with the whole remote situation.
Yeah, so I actually started at ClearCo March 9th. So it was literally 3 days before everything shut down. So I got to meet everyone for a couple days, got to put my first trinket on my desk, and then everyone's like, okay, we're going to work from home for a couple weeks, and then we never went back. But yeah, I'm based out of Toronto, and actually since being at ClearCo, I've been on a couple of teams. So I actually started on the Experimental pod, which was a group that was put together to really look for new customer problems and test new ideas. We launched a couple things, we piloted a bunch of things. And then I started the banking team, which worked on launching a deposit account for founders. And most recently in January, I moved over to the capital team to lead our flagship product. So I'm currently working on launching new capital products with the team and continuing to iterate and improve on our current products.
Nice. Wow, yeah. It's a lot of shifting around in the last year, so it must have been really exciting.
Yeah, this company moves really quick.
No, yeah, I've been following Andrew and the team for some time, and it's just amazing the velocity the team pushes things out at. It's incredible.
Yeah.
With you joining ClearCo and then everything happening with the pandemic, it must have been like a big overnight shift for you. You started a new company and then everybody's remote, and now it's been like over a year.
Yeah.
What adjustments did you have to make during that transition? Any learnings you could share?
Yeah, so I wasn't on the capital team when COVID hit, but I can definitely speak to what we did as a company. So when the pandemic hit, there were two things that were really top of mind for us. The first was we have all of this data. How do we use our data to make smarter decisions? And that became even more important during this time because everything was changing so quickly. But the second thing that was really, really top of mind for us was really how do we help our customers weather and survive this storm? Our capital is really about being founder friendly, and our revenue share model is already pretty founder friendly. We only receive repayments when the customer makes a sale. So if they don't make any sales, we don't get any repayments. So, but I think even with COVID, there was still so much uncertainty for our founders. And so we took it a step further. We actually reached out to our customers proactively to see how we could help. So that was a big shift for the business. And then, of course, we went remote and having to figure out how to take this culture that they had built that was really built on in-person and how do we scale that to the remote world. So
interesting. And as a product leader kind of adapting to that shift, are you finding success working from home? Do you think eventually things will, when things go back to normal, everybody's vaccinated and Normal life maybe will ensue again.
Yeah.
Do you think as a product manager, the role dynamics have changed a bit, or like how did you see it affected you during this time?
Yeah. It's it's really interesting being a product person in a remote world because um, no one really reports to the product manager, right? Like you have to do everything through influencing and inspiring and organizing people. And to build those kinds of relationships is definitely easier in person. And it was especially hard for me because I'm someone who loves a good whiteboard session. But I don't know if it's like, it's not to say that product roles aren't suitable for home, from work from home. I think one thing that's really interesting to see when everyone does get vaccinated is if everything will go back to normal. Um, and I don't know if it will because we saw this massive trend during the pandemic that like all these companies were closing their offices, which allowed them to expand their hiring pools beyond their own cities. So I think even if we go back to the office, I don't think it's going to be uncommon to have a lot of remote coworkers because of that hiring trend. So yeah, I I think the one thing I definitely adapted when we moved to work from home was being way more intentional about how to build those relationships because you don't get those like serendipitous meetups at the water cooler when you're getting a snack. I actually started booking like random coffee chats with people on my team just so you could start getting to know people beyond like your daily stand-ups. So
No, interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, it must have been a culture change, internally in that company to adopt it. So yeah, thanks for
definitely.
sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, Talking a bit more about ClearCo and more about kind of the mindset culturally, I think business wise you have there.
Mm.
It's very much regarded as one of the most innovative companies right now in Canada. I think the first product that was introduced was called the Growth Capital Fund a
Hmm.
couple of years ago, and now there's like multiple product lines and different like to cater to different types of users.
Yeah.
And a lot of that success can definitely be attributed to that whole experimentation mindset, which I think is infused in the culture. Can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit more about what that culture is like?
Yeah. So the experimentation culture definitely runs really deep at ClearCo. Um, I think I think it's because many or most of us are founders, and so as founders, we just have this like natural inclination to want to find new customer problems to solve, and
Mhm.
naturally we have lots and lots of ideas. But I think also as founders, we know that not every idea is going to be a home run. So one of our core values is speed. And we believe, it's better to test something scrappy today and find out that it's not going to work today so that we can iterate on it rather than build something out for a month only to find out a month later, after you've wasted all these resources and time, that it's not going to work, right? So
Yeah.
definitely experimentation runs really deep at the company.
And how do you decide your ideas that you're going to work on? Because, like you said, there's lots of ideas. Everybody has their own take on whatever, and then you also are listening to the customers,
Yeah.
and they're maybe giving some feedback. How do you know which ones to prioritize on?
Yeah, I mean, there's no perfect way of assessing, which ideas to test first. We do like rough impact assessments. Is this going to be a game changer or is this incremental? It always starts with a customer problem. We'll do a bit of like market analysis, and then again, like because we find really scrappy ways to test these things, um, you can test a lot of different ideas and get answers pretty quickly. So yeah.
And so, how do you assess like the high impact ones? Do you score it? Do you have a committee that like votes on which one to do?
Yeah, I like a good scoring method. So like I'm a fan of the weighted score. Sometimes we do like a rice score. Um, but it's also like what's happening in the industry, what's happening, what is the market size, like what is the total addressable market. We think about a lot of those things. But we also try not to like overanalyze it. The fastest way to get feedback is like to put it in front of a customer and see if it's something that they would even want. So, yeah.
Okay. And so what happens once an idea is selected to move forward? What do you do?
So, I mean, there's lots of ways to test ideas, and every idea is full of assumptions. So, I mean, the tests we run really depends on the assumption you're trying to answer. So, sometimes the way to get an answer is to throw up a landing page with a wait list and see if people are, how fast or how many people are trying to sign up for your wait list. And an interesting thing that I've recently discovered is that sometimes the best research is to just try and pitch it on a sales cold call. Because people aren't afraid to give salespeople a piece of their mind. We've all been there. A sales rep calls you up. They literally have like 15 seconds to pique your interest before you say no thanks and hang up, right? And I think that's one of the advantages of doing that type of test versus, these like research sessions where the participants often compensated. They know the researcher's just trying to get them to give feedback so they can make a product better. They're not asking them to buy anything. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, what people say isn't always what people do. And I find these like cold call sales calls are like really telling.
So you're saying that there might be bias in the research when it's paid, right? Or some survey or some sort of interview that is compensated for?
I mean, I think really, really good researchers have ways to reduce bias, but when you do things like value prop testing, it's really hard to do value prop testing in a very controlled environment. So, with value prop testing, the test almost has to feel as real as reasonably possible. Like one of my favorite examples is Zappos. I don't know if you've heard their founder story, right? They, at the time, like buying shoes online was unheard of. And so what they could have easily done was like more of a traditional route where they go out, buy all of the shoes in all of the sizes, put it up on a website and see if people will buy it. But instead, they went out to a store, took pictures of shoes, put them up on a website, and if someone bought it, they would run out and buy the shoe and then ship it, right? Like that's like a very clear example of seeing if people would actually buy something off you that is really new, and you don't know if that's like a trained behavior yet. So,
got it. That's a good example. Yeah, they had I'm seeing actually more and more of those companies come up now where they do something similar to that, which I think is like a very hustle first type of mentality.
Yeah.
Fake it till you make it in many ways.
Yeah.
On another call that we had, you mentioned that large companies, there is a lot of fear around experimentation. We work with a few enterprises, and there's always that concern about what if the risk is too high? What if it comes out bad? And they're sometimes always just get too scared to even to try something new.
Yeah.
What is it that they see or that you see that they don't?
I think a lot of companies believe that success comes from finding a problem, having a great brainstorm, and then doing really great planning, and then starting to build it out and sell it. Like it's very waterfall, right? I think the other thing so I think there's two things that hold people back. One is they see taking that 2 weeks to test an idea as lost time, and they see it as a delay in delivery. But when you really think about it, like the number one reason why startups and products fail is because no one actually wanted that product. So I think that's like a mind shift that needs to happen, is like those 2 weeks can save you lots of money and lots of time. Um, and and yeah, like the second thing I would say that holds people back is like a fear of reputation loss. Maybe it's because they think that talking about something that they haven't built yet feels dishonest. But to me, it really comes down to intention, right? Like, are you collecting their information for a dishonest reason? Like, are you asking for their email so you can turn around and sell their email? Or are you asking because you actually want to build this thing that you're asking them to sign up for? So I think with reputation, there's ways around it. And I think if your intentions of collecting their information is honorable, then I don't think there should be anything to worry about.
If you don't mind, I'd love to kind of dig deeper into that one a bit more. What best practices can you share about presenting the right intentions to demonstrate it so that you don't come off as it coming back to you, essentially?
Yeah, so one thing that I've seen in really good experiments is when you do, so an experiment is you're trying to get them to do an action that simulates real life, but you don't actually have a product to deliver yet, right? So when you get to that end step where you can't actually give them the product at the very end, be very honest that, oh, you caught us right before we're ready, but we've got your email. We'll definitely let you know when when we actually launch. So it's not like you get all the way to collecting their credit card information, you check out, and then don't deliver. Stop it before it gets to that point. Get to the point where you have enough confidence that this is something that they want, and then be honest that like you've caught us before we're ready. So I think those are like really good experiments.
Just being forthcoming and transparent into where the product really is, and keeping everybody posted. Okay, that's great. I think I'm gonna get to this, but I was just thinking about something. Your knowledge in product management, I think, didn't come through like traditional learning. Or I wanted to ask, what resources did you use, or which ones do you suggest for product leaders to look at to become better at experimentation?
I think everyone loves like the Lean Startup book. There's lots of great examples there. But yeah, experiments come in all forms. And I actually really struggled to find like a comprehensive resource of experiments when I first started experimentation. So I Googled a lot, just trying to find examples of experiments. I came across a lot of like founder stories like Dropbox and Zappos and Groupon. But yeah, there isn't I wish there was like an experiments Bible. But one of the things I ended up doing was I created a deck with like some of my some of the top 10 experiments that I've seen and common ones that I've seen, and just tried to do presentations around it to help other people learn how to do experimentation.
Can I ask? Can you tell us what those 10 types of experiments are? Just high level?
Yeah. So some of them are things like, I think the landing page test is probably the most popular one. You have like a wait list for a beta product. You've got some like, smoke and mirror type screenshots of like what it might look like in the future. And really like honing that value prop, and is this something that resonates with customers? That's a very popular one. There's always the good A/B test. Netflix does this a lot, where they'll show you different graphics on for the same movie, just to see like which graphics gets the most people to click in the next show. The Zappos example that I shared is an example of a technique called Wizard of Oz. So everything on the front end looks real, but in the back end, you're just like pulling all these levers behind a curtain and pretending like it's real, and it's fully automated. So yeah, those are some examples.
I love it if you're open to it. When we post this recording, if we could put in your 10 types of experiments into
Yeah,
the
yeah,
share, I think
absolutely.
it'll be really valuable for everybody.
Yeah, I would love to share it.
Awesome. I wanted to ask what is the difference, or maybe there is no difference, between a simple experimentation and experimentation at scale? Like, what processes do you need to have in place before you start scaling?
Um, I think there's different types of experiments, right? Like there's optimization experiments. So like those like small tweaks that you make here and there. You're A/B testing to optimize the performance of your existing products, and that definitely requires a lot more infrastructure to scale that type of experimentation. You need a lot of traffic. You need to be able to split traffic and build out separate experiences, similar to the Netflix example that I shared.
Mm-hmm.
But I think value prop testing is a lot, I think it's a lot easier. It's where you're like testing new ideas that you want to see if customers even want. And there's just like a whole slew of scrappy, low cost, easy to spin up experiment tools. Things like Squarespace and Unbounce will help with launching landing pages, um, setting up online ads to drive traffic to those pages. If you need a phone number, there's like virtual phone number services. So I think there's lots of ways to do simple experimentation, and also, experimentation at scale obviously just takes a lot more infrastructure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And about landing pages, I'm always curious because everybody I speak to gives me different answers. But
Okay.
say you throw up a landing page and you're testing out a product and you have a value proposition. Depending on your sample size, statistically or percentage-wise, what is like a pass or fail of how many people sign up to a wait list? That you're like, okay, this is good enough to move forward. And like, is that objective enough as well? I'm
That's a
curious.
good question. So at Intuit, we had like a team that like actually measured statistical significance. So I don't know all the math behind it, but some of the tools like Unbounce actually have a what they call like a confidence score, which I love because as a non-statistical person, I don't know how to calculate whether or not this is statistically significant. So some tools like Unbounce will have tools built in to share like is this significant or not. So
okay, cool. I believe you have both experience in B2B and B2C, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So with that, dual mind, when it comes to like understanding the business side in those two approaches, what would you say is the difference in how you approach experimentation between B2B and B2C?
Yeah. I think the main difference I found in experimenting in B2C versus B2B, it really depends on how the customers typically interact with you. So there's definitely a lot of overlap in the tactics, like ads, landing pages, Wizard of Oz. And that's especially true for B2C customers since most of them interact with you and buy things from you through a website. But I think one advantage and possible difference of B2B companies is that you often have a sales team. And I think I mentioned this earlier, like the quickest way to find out if someone wants your product or not is try and sell it to them. And when you're on the phone, you get that instant feedback, and you also have the opportunity to dig into like why and ask for digging questions. So I think that's like one of the benefits of having doing experimentation in a B2B company. So
okay. Wanted to ask a bit more about how the product teams ship products at ClearCo, because I know you're growing, scaling quickly. There's a lot of different initiatives happening, multiple different fronts. I'm curious, how do you work on continuously shipping quality products, improving them for your customers across differentiated product offerings? Maybe it's like what does a team look like? How do they work in the pods?
Oh, I see.
So that there isn't like two different teams maybe overlapping or working on something similar together.
Got it. Yeah, we're definitely a very fast-growing company, but I don't think we're quite so big yet that like the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. But there's definitely we have a pod structure that has like a GM, a product person, engineering manager, developers, designers. So we almost run like separately, but we have Monday kickoffs every week where we recap every team's initiatives, and I think the company's done a really great job in carving out swim lanes for each of us that are big enough that we have room to stretch without bumping into each other too much. But also the team, like the product team, meets weekly to talk about how everything we're working on is doing, but also to help with identifying like overlaps and dependencies.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you come across any situation recently where you guys shipped something that wasn't successful, and like any learnings you could share from that?
Yeah. We piloted a card product, and it was going well, but I think we wanted to re-examine how it would fit into our product suite. We had launched it pretty early on, and since then we had launched 3 or 4 or 5 new products, and we had to rethink how this would fit in our ecosystem of products. So we paused it, and we're hoping to kind of reimagine it and relaunch it. So that's maybe one where it was like an idea, a glimmer in our eye. We tested it out, we tried it out. It was the right product at the right time for our customers, given our current product suite. But now that we've grown our product suite so much, we kind of need to reimagine that one. So,
with that idea, or like other ideas that that your team comes up with, and you mentioned that a lot of your team members are like potential like ex-founders, but they have that kind of mindset, right? Yeah. The question I have is, what questions do you ask yourselves or each other to create a habit in your workflow around that concept of like, are we doing the right thing?
Yeah, I think we're very we're good at being skeptical of our strong convictions that our ideas are brilliant and fail-proof, and we're pretty diligent about finding our assumptions, and our automatic default when we have like an idea is, okay, great, let's test it. So it hasn't been like an uphill battle or anything like that. I think it's just like so ingrained in our culture that when we have a good idea that we want to see if it's sticky, the automatic response is like to try and test it. So
okay. And what does success mean to you when you ship a product?
Do customers love it? Does it solve a customer problem? Do they tell their friends about it? Yeah, I think like every other product, that's kind of how we define success.
Okay. I always love asking this question because like it's always a very different answer, in different people's lens, which is, how do you measure ROI on products, especially longer term products that you might not see results on? Like, how do you get comfortable around that kind of concept that you, at the end of the day, maybe have to report to somebody on some sort of P&L, and you're reviewed based on that return on investment that your team delivered?
Yeah. Oh, that's a hard one. I mean, I think any company that's not like a nonprofit, always measures revenue, retention. Like these are like very common ones. Um, I think word of mouth is like measuring word of mouth or referrals is a really strong indicator of whether or not your product is delivering value to customers. And there's always the NPS score. We ask that question a lot after certain experiences in our product. What else? Yeah, I think those would be most of them.
Oh, it's interesting. The NPS one comes up a few times.
Mm-hmm.
In ClearCo's case, it's really like if another founder refers another founder to the platform, would that be a word of mouth, a trigger?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, it's very interesting. I'm always curious about these things because I'm trying to learn, okay, how do we as a product studio figure out what is measurable from an ROI standpoint for our clients, right? After they spend time and money building something. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. A couple last questions, Pansy. I wanted to go a bit deeper into your background. So from my understanding, I think you mentioned this when we had a chance to connect last, that you didn't take a traditional path into product management. You were originally, I think, in marketing and then in design before becoming a PM.
Yeah.
And I've actually been seeing a lot of success in this, transition of like, a designer or a marketer, going into this type of role. How do you think, I want to know from your perspective and your past experience, how does it influence your perspective as a product leader?
Yeah, that's interesting because I actually feel like product people come from all kinds of backgrounds. Like, there's no such thing as a degree in product management, right? So, I think the most interesting background that I've seen come through he was like a physicist turned product manager. That was cool. But yeah, I moved into product because as a marketer, I was always handed the product after the fact, right? Like I had to articulate the value prop for it after it was built. And I went into product because I wanted to be, I wanted to have more influence and impact on what problems we solved and how we solve them, versus just getting it and then having to wrap it up in a website and show it to customers. So I think that my marketing experience has really helped me in my product role in that I am always, always, always thinking about what customer problem am I solving and what value am I providing to that customer. And I think my design experience actually helped me build this like really strong sense of empathy for our customers, and it gave me the tools to learn how to dig and uncover those customer pains. So yeah, I wouldn't trade my marketing and design experience for the world. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think having that background actually as a prior designer that you learn to appreciate how difficult sometimes product design can be?
Yeah, definitely.
Any specific examples come to mind?
I think it's actually in working with developers that you learn the limitations of your designs, right? Like you're asking for these things, but the untangling that would have to happen on the back end to enable some of these user experiences is like it's something that you don't think about always as a new designer. So
yeah, it's always hard as a designer not seeing your design come to life exactly the way you envision it.
Yeah.
So having that appreciation, right, of like, okay, it might not be doable or feasible the way you've designed it, and having to compromise, right?
Yeah.
So it's always a battle. Cool. Pansy, that was great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate being on our show and answering all these questions. I'm sure our audience members are going to really appreciate you having shared this expertise with us today.
Thanks. Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation.
Awesome. For everybody listening, tune in next time to hear more product innovation professionals come on our show and share their insights. So stay tuned for our next episode. Thanks again, Pansy.